Good evening, everyone. This is Josh with Big Slick Adventures, and tonight we have another episode on horror movie reviews. And this time I'm doing something a little bit different. We're going to actually kind of do a compare and contrast between, and since it's almost Valentine's Day, we're comparing My Bloody Valentine, the original from 1981, and we're going to compare that with the remake from 2009. So I thought it would be a good time of the year to do this and kind of see which one I prefer. And I'm certainly be curious to hear what everyone else thinks. So go ahead and get started with this. 1 second here. So let's take a look at both of these two fine movies here. So, anyhow, so let's first look at the story and the setting. The premise for both these movies are pretty similar, really. You have a random killer who is masquerading as the infamous Harry Warden, who decades earlier killed several people, mostly in the mining caves of a small mining town. Harry, who was a miner himself, would dress accordingly as he would hunt down and murder his victims, often with a pickaxe. Also, we see heart shaped candy boxes that contain a human heart in both the movies. However, each movie tends to tell the story in a little bit of a different way. With the original, a larger portion of the story takes place on the Valentine's Day party that's going to be held near where the mines are at. And of course, each party goer is picked off one by one. Though there are a couple of victims who are killed far from the setting, with the remake, the kills are spread out throughout the town, with the focus shifting back and forth from the mines to the rest of the town. And there really isn't a Valentine's Day party or dance or anything like that as its main setting. Um, there's definitely a love triangle in both these movies involving the characters of Thomas in the original or TJ in the remake. Then you also have the characters of Axel and Sarah, who are the same characters from both movies, just different actors. The characters are portrayed and written somewhat differently. In the original, TJ, who has recently come back, uh, who has come back to town and is the ex-boyfriend of Sarah, who is currently dating Axel. Both Axel and TJ are minors. In the remake, where Thomas has returned to town, and I got them confused earlier. Sorry, Thomas is the one in the remake, and TJ's in the original. But anyhow, Thomas has returned to town and is the ex of Sarah. He has come back to sell the mine because he inherited the mine from his family. And Axel, instead of working in the mine, is actually the sheriff and happens to be married to Sarah. Also in the original, Axel is the murderer and TJ is the hero. In the remake, they pretty much swap to where Thomas is the murderer and Axel, I don't know if I would call him a hero, but he certainly isn't the killer. Also, the original movie takes place in Canada, where the remake takes place here in the United States. And let's see what else we have here. Yeah, I'm going to put myself in here. Yeah, let's do something a little different here. There we go. So, getting back. So, both stories, looking at these, both stories, when looking at these, are basically well written. There's a fairly decent dose of kills and suspense, I would say. But I do think the original is a bit more grounded, a little bit more grittier. It takes a more simpler approach, which sometimes can be better, sometimes less is more. Though I do appreciate the remake's attempt in changing up the story a little bit, so it's just not a shot for shot remake. But I'm going to give the edge to the original. Now let's look at characters and performances. Now, despite the remake featuring some strong supporting performances, both from the legendary Tom Atkins and also veteran character actor Kevin Tighe, whom some of you might know if you, depending on how old you are, played the character of Roy in the 1970s fire rescue EMT television series called Emergency. Yes, I am that old, so if any of you can remember that series, wave your hand. But the cast of characters as a whole kind of pales in comparison to the original cast. Although they do have some household names in the remake, like Tom Atkins, and you also have Jensen Ackles, who plays the character of Thomas in the original. But the overall cast, I think, in the characters in the original are just a lot more likable than what we get in the remake. Um, Especially my favorite character, and this comes from the original, is the character of Hollis, who's this big, fun-loving, burly man, and he's of course a miner, and whose character they don't have in the remake. So that was kind of like kind of a con also of the remake. Wish they could have had that character in there. But like I said, the characters overall in the original, I think, are just far more likable and relatable. The miners, which we mainly focus on, are basically just a bunch of hard-working, hard-partying, blue-collar guys, and then they have their girlfriends who love them for it, and they're just very. It was kind of unlike most slashers of that time, where slashers normally would concentrate on teenage characters, high school characters, maybe young college characters, whereas these characters were probably, most of them, probably in their mid, late 20s and just regular blue collar workers, something you didn't really see that much at all back then. And you really don't see a whole lot of it now when you think about it. So they're far more likable than I think a lot of the characters that we get in the remake. So when they are picked off one by one, we do kind of feel bad for them. Even Axel, who in the original is a little bit likable at times. Sometimes he's an asshole. Sometimes he's likable, because there's times where you think, could he be the killer, or is it really Harry Warden? Or when it looks like towards the end that he's actually trying to help save everyone, we're kind of like given a little bit, the kind of whatever, subvert our expectations with that character a little bit. In the remake, both Axel and Thomas are both a couple of assholes really throughout the movie. So it really doesn't surprise. It was just coming down to which one we thought was going to be the killer. I think most people probably thought it was going to be Axel, but of course it ends up being Thomas. But overall, though, the most of the characters are just okay in the remake, whereas the characters in the original are a lot more likable and a lot more fun to follow. So a big edge is going to go to the original on that one. And now we get to the kills, gore, and effects. The remake is far gorier than the original. It's not even close. Though there is some gore used in the remake that is a bit CGI, and you can tell. And it was filmed in 3D, which, I'm kind of on the fence on. The original is not really overly gory, but that's due to the filmmakers were forced to have to cut down on a lot of the kills. And therefore, now there is an extended cut of the original, but I've not seen it yet, haven't been able to find it. Um, there are some inventive kills, but overall, I'm going to have to give the edge to the remake when it comes to this category of the kills, gore, and effects. And then we have the next section would be the atmosphere, suspense, and cinematography. Both movies have a great deal of all three and do a good job, I think. And they're definitely a product of their time. The original is definitely an 80s movies, and the remake is definitely a 2000s movie. So a lot of times it might come down to your own preference, but I do enjoy the gritty, dirty look of the 80s movie over anything that's more contemporary. as this is in essence a whodunit murder story. Both do, I think, a pretty good job of building up the suspense and tension. I would also note that the original does also probably do a better job of presenting the Valentine's Day atmosphere throughout the movie, as we will see, particularly in the beginning first half of the movie. You see decorations, Valentine's Day decorations throughout the town, and there's all this talk and excitement of the Valentine's Day dance and all the parties that are going to happen. And in the remake, there really isn't much of that. It almost feels like the movie could have taken place at any day of the year, really, if we didn't mention, have heart shaped boxes of, someone's heart inside of them. You really wouldn't know. So in this case, particularly with the atmosphere, I'm giving the edge to the original. So, in closing, the remake did a good job of honoring the original while doing things a little bit differently. I would certainly consider it a worthy remake and one that I will watch every year, as I typically watch both these movies back to back. But having stronger characters, better characters, and a better Valentine's Day atmosphere, and the gritty look of it being from the 80s, I think it definitely puts the original ahead. So I would definitely give the edge overall to the original My Bloody Valentine. It just simply has more heart, no pun intended. So I give the original an 8 out of 10, and I'll give the remake an admirable 7 out of 10. So please feel free. So thank you for watching this. Make sure to give me a thumbs up. And what was I going to do here? Yeah, give me a thumbs up. Leave a comment. Which one do you enjoy more? Do you enjoy the original more, or do you actually like the remake maybe a little bit more? Feel free to let me know in the comment section. And once again, thank you for watching, and I will see you soon here on Big Slick Adventures, and hopefully have another special review for you next week. So, see you then.